welcome back everybody to In Shambles. I am Matthew Shuckman, and of course I'm here with Nadia Martinez, aka Gotham Geek Girl, to talk about The Last of Us Season 2, first part, technically, of part 2 of the game, if you want to consider that. That makes sense, right? I guess that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, part one of part two.
And we are up to episode 6, The Price, which is
Seven.
oh no, seven's next week. Seven's the last episode next week.
Oh.
Yeah. This
Oh
was
my
like
God, it's not 8 episodes, it's
it's only
seven.
7, yeah. Well, and as we suspected, it's the flashback episode.
Yep.
So we'll get into a lot of it. Again, for those listening, we will do our best not to go crazy spoilerific in terms of what happens in the whole story. And if we do, we will mention it because we are fans of the game. And while I think it's very important, you tell me if I'm wrong. Even though we have criticisms and critiques, doesn't mean we're not enjoying ourselves. Does not mean that we don't think changes should be made, this, so on and so forth. We're just comparing, right? That's so don't freak out, everybody. um, so what are your initial thoughts before we get into more deeper conversation of episode 6, The Price?
So it started off for me. I was gonna say, oh, this was the best episode this season.
Oh,
And then it does something that pisses me off again.
oh, what did that? Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Oh, I got that's right. We'll get into that in a second. Um, yeah, it's funny. I was again kind of knowing it was the flashback episode, and again, we'll get into details specifically, even with the opening flashback. Um, but I don't know if I don't think it was the best episode at a certain point, but I was thinking to myself that there's part of me saying that I like the idea of how we're going to be able to kind of see the deterioration all in one stretch. But then as something else happened, which we'll get into near the end of the episode, I felt that while it was an improvement over what they did in the game in certain aspects because it made more sense for certain things. And again, I know I'm being vague. We'll get into that in specifics. I then started to think this seems like it's too not rushed, but like the feelings don't seem like they had enough time to build to the crescendo they got to in the game, or because they're using the same dialogue, but it feels like the version here didn't have time to really gestate enough to really mean what it means in the grand scheme of things. That is the vaguest thing in the world, but
I
we'll
get
get to it
it.
because I think what we'll do is we'll start with the opening, which was the flashback to Joel and Tommy in their teen years, which I get, and I get where they're adding in parts of the themes of the ideas of breaking cycles of stuff and in how it pertains to what he's going to say to Ellie later on and his own life. And I love the fact that Tony Dalton's their dad, even though he's technically not the greatest person in the world. To a certain level, you can tell that he actually has some introspectiveness about him. But I don't like the fact that there are like we talked about this. They feel the need to like pump in random things that are definitely Easter eggs. I don't think needs to be there. Like I don't need to know that Joel's watch was really his father's watch, even though they don't say it. They just show it that it's on his. But like it seems like it was so. It's like it's too much. Like is it really going to like affect anything later on? I don't think so. I think they're trying too hard to shoehorn in too much.
No, I agree. I feel like it's weird. It's taking out, I feel like some moments that are more important and they're adding in like unnecessary context and like I
Yeah,
feel like it keeps adding to the grander scheme of like they think like viewers are stupid. Like they have to constantly explain something instead of just letting it develop or just letting it be. Like it was a cool scene, yes. It was interesting. Like maybe they want to add context that we never got in the games, but it's also like kind of like what you said, unnecessary in the grander scheme of things. I don't know. I mean, I did like that I just forgot his name, the actor that plays their father.
Tony Dalton.
Yes, I remember him from Hawkeye. But I did like that he caught himself like Joel, like you said, like later it ties into Joel like catching himself, like not trying to repeat that generational trauma,
Yeah.
like not bringing his past experiences and trying to be better. So I did like that like correlation, but it was also like once again, did we really need this?
Yeah, no, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you're saying. Because again, like it's a nice thing. I kind of like it as if it was like nothing. If I had no idea, clearly I can see where it can mean a lot. And I do think to me that's I always say that both Pedro and Bella are like doing what I love, which is like even when they're getting angry and outbursting, there's still some sort of subtlety to it, and they're not going overboard. But watching Tony get all that emotion out without having to be overly exuberant about it, that's what I love. That's like, yeah, please, give him nominations for best guest supporting actor, whatever you want. But and yes, while we can see how it feeds in to the story, I don't think it's necessary. I just think it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, we can do this, let's do it, but do we need to? Especially again with the whole watch thing, because I know they don't point it out, but like that's like I guarantee there are people out there go, oh my god, that was his dad. Was who cares? Like it doesn't that doesn't affect anything because especially since that as a mechanic in the story of the games and which is the story of the show is meant to show a damage of Joel. And now, yes, you can add on again, passing things down, but it doesn't. It's just an extra little thing that doesn't need to be there. I agree. um, but then, and I think that's the same thing that goes along. Like I like having extra characters or more interaction with characters that we have fleeting moments with in the game. Um, but it's weird that they're trying like they're trying to make things out of Seth. And granted, they do a little bit with his story in the TV show earlier on, but I don't think he's got to be the guy you always go back to. To just like it feels random just to shoehorn him in again. It's not again not bad. It's fine. I do think it's weird that
He's a baker.
no, I think it's weirder though that Joel's expertise in smuggling made him know where kids would hide their Legos.
Oh yeah.
Because he's like, I search those homes. Like, well, if you're smuggling like me, you would know how to search. You know where people hide things. That's just such a randomly stupid thing in my mind. Again, it's minor. It has nothing to do with anything. I think it's silly. um,
And he was a cop. He would know more about where things are or where cops planted them.
I mean, just to turn over a house, whether it's destroyed or not. Yeah, you think he'd have. I mean, I'm not trying to say now be stereotypical or something like that. But yeah, you think he'd have a little bit more of a whereabout. But like, to go to the same place like are kids smuggling their Legos somewhere? It was just such a randomly stupid
Yeah.
thing. Um, uh, but then and then we get into all what most people were waiting. Oh, first of all, before we get into future days and all that stuff, Bella Ramsey's high on painkillers acting
Yeah.
is fucking amazing. That was so good. That
This
was like
episode made me like her more, to be honest.
I mean Ellie more or Bella more?
No, Bella more.
Oh, okay. I just like I mean I prefer a lot of the stuff she did in season one compared to season two so far. I
Mhm.
mean, I think she's still great, but like that was just like I mean I don't think I've ever been in that position personally. I never had to be that high on painkillers myself, but it was just something that was so perfect about everything she did in that entire time that was just like you could have just given me an hour of her doing that and I would have been happy as a fucking clam. Um, but yeah, so then we get into that leads into and well, and again, making this short comparison, like I don't think there's a big deal to be made out of, because in the game she describes it as she gave herself a chemical burn
hmm
to hide it. Doesn't make a difference the way she does it. It's not gonna ruin anything whatsoever. But I don't know about you. Like to me, in the game version, I always felt that it was her and Joel decided like on that together.
hmm
Was that something that you thought, I mean, again, it doesn't matter, I don't think, but I'm just curious.
I'm trying to recall, but I do feel like it was more of a safety measure. Like you're saying, like they established it, not like her being like, "Oh, this looks fun. Let me try this. I want to wear short
Well,
sleeves."
yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the whole thing of like it was more of like I just wanted to wear short sleeves again compared to God forbid something happens, we should hide this now because
Mhm.
you see her doing it. You see her again the first episode of the season where she turns the bite into
Yep.
a big scar, which I just have to say I'm so sick of people. I'm watching people react to it, and during episode 4 when she has to explain to Dina that she's immune in the show version, people are like, "Show her your bites." And not granted, I get that a lot of them don't understand that the burn mark's there yet because they only kind of show it in the show. But I heard people specifically saying, "Show her your stomach where that thing bit you." I was like, "Did you not watch her
Cut it.
specifically carve that to not look like a bite mark?" It's like I'm so confused why people don't pay attention to these things. Um, but yeah, I mean, I agree. It's always been to me that like that was always like I gotta, and that's what's weird about it. Like clearly for Ellie in the show, past doing the burn, scarring herself to make sure any bites aren't noticed is normal. But I always thought that was something Joel was in on, which doesn't matter. But I just thought. And then, oh shit, so sorry everybody. I dropped my phone. Um, so what were your thoughts on the official Joel doing Future Days?
Are we starting with 15th birthday?
Yeah,
So the guitar engraving was beautiful. I loved it. Joel, that was still 15. Yes, that was still 15th birthday with the cake when
yeah.
he got her the cake and he sings. Like it was beautiful. Like I teared up a little bit. I thought it was great, like a great way to show more of Pedro, obviously, to really give them a chance to show more of Joel and Ellie's connection and how he really considered her like a daughter, how he really took her like under his wings in that way and how he was so happy like to get her a cake. Everything had to be perfect and like I don't know, it was really cute. Like the episode started really strong for me. I really liked that. And then the whole showing the whole like how he made the guitar pick and all that, how he like engraved her drawings. I just really love that part. I thought that was done really well.
I do think it's interesting that they're turning it into that her obsession with the moth and doing the drawings because again for the game version like he just finds a guitar with that inlay in it. They
Hmm.
don't make that specifically, and not that not I don't know if it was maybe just a coincidence that or like I can't really remember if they do anything in the game specifically with that beyond just the fact that there's a moth on there and then that there's the certain symbolism later on, but they do make it more personal
Hmm.
than what's in the game, which is a good way of kind of really bringing out um, some more symbolism out of it, even though I don't necessarily like the whole. I mean, it was the meeting with Gale and talking about the moth and her telling him that it means death or something like that is fine, but I don't like that they tried to shoehorn in so much more symbolism about that too, because I don't think it's going to lead anywhere significant. I just think it was more of like a spur of the moment kind of thing.
Yeah, like with that, it kind of feels like they're like trying to like foreshadow like suicidal thoughts or something dark. Like, and there's nothing like that. Like, it just, I don't know. It feels weird.
It does. It feels not weird. I guess. I mean, I guess it does, but it just feels just like we were talking about earlier. It just doesn't feel necessary. I guess. Granted, you want to add in more ideas of like certain thought process, or maybe because I think it's interesting to be where in my argument, in my very specific argument about the idea that Ellie learning from Nora that Jerry was Abby's dad, something that she never knew ever in the game, was always to my point about the idea that she didn't have the empathy enough to consider it beyond what she just thought. She thought it
Hmm.
was because of the cure, and she just assumed that she didn't care to look any further. And like now I'm looking at this section of the TV show and where Joel is trying to find out stuff, but I'm curious to know if the idea is that it's wrong. Like that's not what that Ellie doesn't believe that it maybe means death herself, but maybe he learns that information from Gale and he just automatically starts to use that as his paranoia
Hmm.
for changing things. And I find that very interesting. And but I don't know if they're going to resolve any of that or if it's just an assumption now that you have to pull out from your own for your own self without enough evidence. But that makes me very curious and very interested now that I think about it. Um, but yeah, but it seems the whole thing seems more of like a throwaway as or an aside, because I don't see them going back to resolving a lot of it. Granted, there are things in the episode that maybe you want to tie to it, but in the grand scheme of things, I feel that maybe it will be left by the wayside. Which then I think I skipped back and forth a little bit. I definitely skipped forward, I think. So let's go back to the one everybody was waiting for beyond the future days, which was the museum. Uh, and before we get into some of it, I will say because like, I'm not comparing, saying like, oh, I think this was. There are plenty of things, and there will be things that are going to come up very soon that I'll say like, oh, I like the way they did this in the game better, I like the way they did this in the TV show better. And I love everybody's delivery of lines, whether they are better than what was in the game, an exact replica of what was in the game, an improvement was in the game. I don't know why, and because there's nothing wrong with her delivery, but for some reason, Ashley Johnson's version of "Holy shit, Joel, it is a dinosaur" in the game,
Hmm.
I think was so. It's just like you can't top the way she delivered that, and it's fine. It's just like there's something about the tonation of it that like is too perfect, and I was like, I kind of was hoping somehow that it would be the exact same. And again, this is a very silly thing, but I just can't help but think about it. That's all. And the fact that they did have her actually climb, because much like the Take on Me section in the video game, you people cannot know that you can climb the T-Rex in the game. That's like you have to just know to do it yourself. So the fact that they did it, I think, is interesting. That another little thing. It's like you're recreating this, but you may have not done this in the game yourself. Did you do it in the game? Did you climb the
I
T-Rex?
did the hat on all of them.
Oh, the hat for sure. The hat went on every one, which is also funny because they don't do the interior dinosaur stuff, which is fine. There's no reason
Hmm.
to. But I saw a little behind the scenes thing where apparently they had all that stuff set up, and I wonder if they did shoot extra stuff that we didn't see because there is a whole bunch of that museum with overgrowth on it in the dinosaur exhibits that they did for the show. They didn't do it. Um, but then they recreate the lander capsule almost to like 1-to-1 perfection, right? I mean, it was almost exactly how it was in the game in the lunar capsule.
Yeah, it was pretty beautiful. The I just loved the whole like museum aspect, especially in the game, because going back to the game again,
Yeah.
it can get very dark. So it's like when they have spurs of moments that are happy, it's like a great break in the game. My only issue with the way they did it in the show is that I think they're doing too much of the happy and not enough of the struggle.
Oh, you're talking about just in that section, or
In pretty much this episode, but I guess that section, like, I know you have to cut out hours of gameplay, but I still feel like we didn't see anything from them, like, fighting together, really. They just kind of, like, skipped over all of it and then found Eugene, but they didn't fight. Like,
well, I mean, well, look, we won't skip straight to
yeah,
the museum.
I'll go back to, I
Yeah.
just emphasize, like, a lack of challenges. There's no danger, but I do think the space scene was done beautifully.
Well, what I would say is that I agree in the TV show version not doing the entire after the lander, where Ellie wants to go see more of the museum and she's by herself because
Hmm.
Joel can't get in. He's got to find a way to get in, and she discovers a whole bunch of stuff. Instead, they do it with her just walking after and seeing literal fireflies. And I get 100% doing that. It's tough to do and almost not pointless, but it would be arbitrary to do all that in the TV show. It's in the game. But I will say that I do think that visual of now, I know you know, but I'll describe it for people who haven't played the game. Basically in the game, she goes to this whole section of the it's like the wildlife section of the museum by herself
Mhm.
while trying to find a way to get Joel in. And there's a wild boar that's kind of like loose, and she thinks it's an infected, and it knocks her over. And as it knocks her over, she's in the dark. She picks up her flashlight and she just shines it on the wall. She's already found a whole bunch of notes and a whole bunch of writings on the wall. They're very sinister. Feels like something's really going to happen. But when she gets knocked over, she puts a light on the wall, and in paint, it just says liars. And then Joel gets in the door right next to that, and he's like, "Are you okay?" And she goes, "Yeah." And then it shows her looking at the wall, and he kind of looks at it and says, "Okay, time to go." And as they leave, it pans up to see that it's a huge firefly symbol that says "liars" under it. And I think the power of that is just like it's like kind of like, oh, I got goosebumps thinking about it. And I get that that's a tough thing to do in the TV show and the way they're and the stuff they have to do. So I'm 100% fine with them not doing it, but there's something about that I wish it was there for people to see, um, instead of just like the actual Fireflies, which is still good, but it's not the same. It's just not the same,
I
especially
think
since,
it makes it less effective and less heavy because it's just
yeah.
like, oh, they're so pretty. I don't think it has any effect in sense of like the fireflies. I think it's just, oh, those are pretty fireflies. Like,
Well, I mean, but I also think like some of it gets not some of it. I think I shouldn't say gets some of it gets sucked out, but the grander, um, full emotion of all these flashback scenes gets taken out because again, was not expecting and 100% fine with them not doing Ellie and Joel having to fight the bloater in the hotel on the way to the music store flashback, which is a separate flashback, but along the same lines of like going through the years for people who haven't played the game. The idea is that they get in, they're Tommy's trying to get them to talk to each other a little bit more. So he sends they go out to try and find new guitar strings. They have to travel through a hotel. They get caught, whole infected battle, and they have to fight a big bloater together. But it's that idea of after that in that scene, they find the dead bodies of two people who tried to leave
mm.
Jackson because they were sick of they weren't doing anything. They weren't doing anything to try and help the world. They felt they were just like happy and safe. So they wanted to go out and save the world. And so it's another level of just like you're saying, that's not so much in terms of the quote unquote depression simulator that The Last of Us 2 could be for certain people, but it's just adding more of that weight to the build up of how Ellie learns the truth, which we'll get to, but different in the game than it is in the show. Um, and so it's just like with all those things missing, like I said, seeing the Fireflies is great and all, and it does what you needed to do, but in comparison to how heavy and emotional it is, they're like two ends of an uneven scale in a lot of ways. And now I'm ranting, so I'm gonna stop.
No, no, that all makes sense because it's all like you said, like the bigger picture. I just feel like they're not showing the morbidness to it. It's a little, as I'm wearing like a Speak No Evil shirt, but I just feel like it's missing that bleak darkness.
The original Speak No Evil, the foreign Speak No
Oh
Evil.
yes,
Yeah,
the
exactly.
original is way
But
better.
that was like
1,000% better.
talk about depressing. But
Yeah,
and we're not going to get into that. But like,
yeah.
yeah, that's like I wish people who never saw the original and only saw the remake go see the original and then come back to me and tell me what you thought. Um,
But yeah, it's missing that like the world's over feeling.
but but interestingly enough, I think for people who are only witnessing the TV show, for the weight they get, and I don't want to keep going back and forth because we will get to it, but the weight they get from that porch scene confrontation, I'll call it a confrontation, but from that porch scene is like there's only so much you can handle in an hour worth of television compared to having the nerves and or the excitement of doing battles in between these hefty cutaways in the game. So if they were to do that in a TV show and have all that, it it would be too much. So it's the right way to do it, I think. But again, it's just in having that knowledge, it just feels strange sometimes, uh, not being able to see some of that stuff. Um, so I see where I definitely see how you think about it, and it makes sense. But I am kind of like, well, clearly I know they can't, and it's a good thing they didn't, because I think it would be too much if you put all that into one TV episode. Uh, like that, I think that would turn people off probably more than Joel's death, maybe. If you were to have all of this in just like one TV episode, like it would kill it would just it would murder people.
I mean, I did like the format, I guess, the overall format of like flashback to relevance now.
Mhm.
Um, that was kind of executed pretty good.
What did you think? Was there anything? Because I don't think there was. And this is also where it was a little weird to me because again, I like the idea that I'm just going to see kind of like one episode worth of deterioration of the relationship, but it felt like it jumped too quick. So like when it got
Hmm.
to the whole 16th birthday, it was 17th birthday with
17,
Kat,
I think, was the drugs, the tattoo, the
the
girl.
tattoo and stuff like that, which that is again like that was a great. If you want to talk about Easter eggs and like telling the story where you don't have to tell the stories, like because in the game you don't meet Kat, but you know Kat gave her the tattoo, and you know they had a relationship. So that was like one of the most perfect ways of kind of
Yeah.
like paying homage to that, but also being able to tell the story in the TV version of it. Um, so great way of doing it, but it just felt like it moved like that was again that was such a quick move to deteriorate, and I get it. Joel has never had to deal with that yet with his own child, and the whole like the line is what was it all the teenage girl stuff at once. But it almost feels, and I get it, and I get that they mapped it out enough in the show, but it kind of feels unJoel to me. That doesn't feel like I feel like Joel's always was a little more level-headed with that kind of stuff. Um, but again, creating the TV show Rift is important, and I get that. But it was a weird uh scenario to come to terms with, I think.
Yeah, like I was almost worried that they were gonna make that the reason she was mad at him, and I was gonna be like, "This is some bullshit." I was like, "They better not make Joel seem like a bigot." Like I was upset. But then, like, I guess it makes sense how like that's how she got her own room, like the garage, like trying to like connect the story, and like you said, like a good way to introduce like the her first experience or whatever with a girl. Um. So I didn't necessarily mind it. But same thing, it did feel like they were just trying to find ways to like make them banter.
Yeah. And then that leads into finally the
19.
Eugene, right?
Yeah.
Or yeah. Now, okay, I'll just go. I'll just. What were your thoughts about the Eugene version of the story?
Okay. I liked all right. I'm just gonna get right into I'll get into the end. I hated that Ellie snitched. I really didn't like
Okay.
how I hated it. I really didn't like how this was done. Um I guess they wanted this to be their excuse why she's so mad at him, so that kind of changed things a little bit. Because this is the sole reason why she's so mad at Joel now, because he broke his promise. So I feel like they put too much onto this and had to create an excuse for him, for her being so mad at him. Um,
I mean, but it does tie into the you know for her it's more so the fact he lied to her about the
yeah,
Firefly situation,
but
right? I mean,
yes, but also it's like you understand why he had to do it. Like
yeah, but it was but it was the sign to her to officially like, even though she has her reservations and her ideas about it, and she's already prepping to ask him about it. Just the idea that he does the same thing that he did to her. It's like, I'm going to tell you what you need to know, and she's like, well, now that's the nail in the coffin. So I know you did it. Now I'm not whether or not you agree with the snitching part of it is one thing. Because yeah, she could have done something just with him alone, and but but where I am holding my reservations with those things is where that I am very much hoping that, like I thought, is like Because again, in the game version, Ellie not perfect, but she's already much more mature. And the TV show version, she still shows a lot of the childness. And I'm trying to see if maybe how she will start to come to terms with things. So I don't want to say anything specific, but part of something I believe to be what would make a great portion of The Last of Us Part 3 if the game is official and what they do, and my story idea could be something that they do between Ellie. I'm being very vague, and I realize this, but something they could do with Ellie and Tommy when the series is ending, which will come back to a little bit more of her realization of not to say lying's good or smart or anything like that, but like that idea of the white lie and how it kind of like is almost a necessity kind of thing. Like I think it can come back into play and may come back into play. And I'm gonna have to bite my tongue for years now till we get to the end of the show to see if that comes out to be the thing. But I'm curious to see if it does. Like her doing that, she will reconcile that with herself at a future point and realize why that was a mistake on her part.
Yeah, because it's that whole concept of like it sucks to lie, but sometimes it's like to protect someone. So it's like he could have not shot him in the head. I don't think he should have shot him in the head. I think he should have like gave him time to enjoy the sunset and it's not like it's like a swarm, you know what I mean? Like once you
Yeah.
see him physically turn, you can take him out, but you could have like let him like enjoy his last moments. Like he's not going to be able to talk to Gail or
Okay.
what were you going to say?
Well, I was gonna say I was gonna ask you just answered. I was gonna ask you if you meant that he should have taken her to Gale or not. But now you're saying she shouldn't have, but he should have given him more time to just relax
I
and
think
just
it's rough because it is putting other people in danger. They he could have like tried to take him, honestly, like Ellie, she's immune. She could have volunteered to have Eugene on the back of her horse because he
mm,
can't bite Joel. Um, so it's like if they had that conversation like together to maybe establish a plan how to get him back. If the journey's way too long and it clearly makes no sense, then obviously Joel should be like, tell me what you want me to tell her. Let him enjoy his last sunset and then take him out. But like it felt a little wrong, like to like lie to him and then like
I,
shoot him in the head.
I mean,
But it's
I personally, I don't think it makes that big of a difference, especially since the person dies at that point. They don't know how long it's been. It's not going to affect
yeah.
them.
Well,
However,
playing
though, I
devil's
will say,
advocate.
sorry,
No, but it's like playing devil's
that,
advocate, like trying to
yeah,
like understand both sides. Because also for Gail, maybe it would have been better her thinking that the last moment he was like, I can't put you in danger. Like it is a lot to grasp, like that whole entire concept of who's right. But I still don't think Ellie was right for
yeah. I
snitching.
just I think there are two things. I think there's a lot of people I got very confused with who like seem to think that like I was very confused with the people going like I wonder what Joel did to Eugene. It's like clearly Eugene got bit and was shot.
Yeah,
We all knew that. We all knew that. Like
yeah.
when the first do it, it's like why is that a mystery to people? It was very confusing to me. So I think a lot of people were trying to build this up as it was going to be something a little more. And it's still important, especially for Ellie's point of view. But I think they were trying to build it up to be something that I think that's the thing. Like I think TV viewers who have never played the game get caught up that the minute they meet any character, they think they're supposed to be
Hmm.
so linchpin that they get like, oh, I have to find out what happened with this, find out what happened with this, and like a lot of these people are not going to be in the story or don't what their part of the story is not going to matter that much.
Yeah, like Gail's not even in the game. It's like I
Yeah,
don't mind the introduction of her character, but it's almost like they're taking precedence over bigger characters. Like we should be getting more of like, I don't know, maybe what's his name? Abby and
Owen.
Owen. Like maybe showing a little more Owen. I don't know.
Well, I mean, we know we'll get that in the future, and
Yeah.
and that's the thing. Like again, like I am like going back to season one with doing the whole episode with Bill and Frank. that works well
Hmm.
in tying things into the rest of your story, and where they're piecemealing it more now. And that's even especially going back to the whole Isaac and the Scar stuff. It's like,
Hmm.
yes, it's gonna have to be in there and it's important, but I feel the way that it's just kind of dropped in there little piece by piece compared to fleshing it out immediately. And I heard that there was like discussion at the time, like, oh, we didn't know if we were going to get renewed for a season three, which is weird to me because I'm pretty sure I heard the news was they were already renewed for 2 seasons when they first
Yeah, that's what I
reviewed.
thought.
So I don't understand that. But like it seems like, because again, my initial thought with that was going to be like when Ellie meets the scars in the game for the first time, then you'd get a whole Bill and Frank episode, but for Isaac instead explaining the breaking of the truce and all this other stuff, which again, you don't need to do. Fine that they did do it differently, but the way that it's kind of piecemealed in makes it, and it is important, don't get me wrong. Those stories are important and detrimental for what happens in the game, but it's the, again, like the idea of like making Seth a bigger thing, which is good again because that feeds into the forgiveness storyline a lot more than what you get in the game. Because I think a lot of people just see Seth as one thing in the game, and they
Hmm.
don't tie in the idea of trying to connect the theme to him. It's just like, oh, that fucking bigot, and that's it. Um, but I think it makes it feel like he's such more of a bigger piece of this than he really is. Um, but with all that being said, I will say that I love the fact that they didn't have you hear the gunshot. You just see the birds flying when he shoots Eugene. You don't hear
Oh,
the
yeah.
gunshot. Loved it. It's not like it's the first time anybody's ever done that before, but perfect. So happy they did that. Thank you. That's what I'll say about that. Um, but yeah, I mean, all right. Let's get into the porch because I have a lot of positive things to say and I have a few negative things to say. And not negative, and again, not negative as in oh horrible, but like, and not negative. I shouldn't use the word negative, but I have a lot of conflicting feelings. Um, Now granted, I am I will say that I am fine with them not holding it back and doing it earlier, but it is very strange, again, for people who play the game, because for people who haven't played the game, if you're listening to this, that is, besides literally just watching Ellie kind of walk in the background, that's the last thing you ever see in this game. You don't know it exists until almost before it happens. Um, so it is strange somehow to feel that it's not going to be that way, and it makes basically the way they're making the show it makes sense not to do that. But I will say that it is a hard thing to just come to terms with in the immediacy when it does happen. I don't know if you agree with that or not,
Like the porch being the last thing we see in the game,
and
but
just then
now
already doing it. Yeah,
them kind of like having to bunch all the flashbacks together in a sense. Like,
yeah.
I guess it's this was a lot harder to adapt than I imagined, I guess.
Mm.
The game part two, because it felt like like part one was so flawless, but it is also like part two, it's hard to explain. But the part two is so intricate, but in terms of like there is no strategic like A to Z
Yeah.
with part two. So them including that in the Joel episode makes total sense. And we always have to go back to the game because it's like we learn things later or we learn things playing the game that the characters don't know. So it is very hard to translate that.
What's weird about this is I don't mean to cut you off, but I should mention this because I have a very good friend that we got in an argument about the game at one point because, and I think I may have mentioned this in an early episode, but it was that scene specifically because his argument was is that you're playing as Ellie, and Ellie knows that happened because it happened in the past technically, so we should know that it happened already, and they shouldn't just drop it on you in the middle of nowhere at 35 hours into playing this game. But I think it's an emotional gut punch. I don't need to know that Ellie knows this. It's because as the player, as the viewer, I'm just being told things in a certain fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm okay with that. And I like the fact that it was done that way. Um, because she does know that in the game, which we don't know that in the
We
game
don't know that.
until it happens. So it's such a strange thing. I'm sorry, just hearing you say that makes it feel interesting. Just to hear somebody say it's like, oh well, we don't know things. I'm like, yes, I don't even know where I'm going with that. My brain just kind of
No,
flooded.
it is a very confusing concept of like whether the character and the viewer know, or just the viewer knows, or just the character knows. Like that is a very like hard concept. And I I don't know. It is as in the game, like you just said, like seeing that at the end is like closure. It's closure and knowing that like okay, Ellie didn't just say fuck you to Joel as her last words. Like that's a good feeling. So in the television sense, it's kind of like they have to pair it with this because they're not probably going to bring Pedro Pascal back again. And it's kind of like
There'll be something, I'm
a
sure.
little things.
Yeah.
Like most of the important scenes, like the birthday space scene and all that, were really important in this episode, and it's tough.
Well, I will say, even if you don't bring him back for a lot, I think that, and again, I'll do this in the vaguest sense possible, not to ruin it for people. But that's the one thing that I found very powerful in the game. But again, laying it as a TV series does make much more sense because she does get a flash at one point, at a very pivotal point, of Joel on the porch. She gets that visage, which affects her in the moment. And up until again, it's up until that point in the game, which is like right before you get to see that scene almost. You don't. It's like what? And I don't. I want to talk so badly about how that plays into themes because it's so important to me, especially since it plays into that fact of Ellie finally realizing that Joel, even if he was overprotective, and this is what I love about the game. This is what bothers me sometimes about the TV show. Not that it's a bad thing, but it's what you have to do in the TV world in general, no matter what story you're telling. Is that it's unsaid in the game, but it's clear that they are illustrating to you is that Joel clearly, in his overprotectiveness, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, the idea of where overprotectiveness in the world in general is about the idea of thinking that we want to protect people from harm over like that is that Joel was trying to protect her from becoming him. He did not want that for her. And I think a lot of it was trying to keep her away from things that would turn her into him. And so why that's very important that that kind of happens and why that flash is going to be very important. Now, whether they do it in the TV show or not, I don't fucking know. We'll have to find out, and it's going to be a while till we get there. But my issue with the scene itself, and not issue, and I should not say issue because it's not an issue, but and again, just to explain for people who haven't played the game, in the game, the official way Ellie, definitely finds out is that she basically, at 17 years old, in her 17th year, she rides off because she needs to know. So she rides to the hospital on her own in the middle of the night,
Hmm.
leaving a note. And she goes back to the hospital and she finds a recording of, which is weird because I know a lot of people say it's definitely Abby, but to me it sounds like Nora. And
Yeah, I think it
she
was
finds a
Nora.
recording. You think it's Nora too, right?
I think it was Nora.
Yeah, it sounds like you to me, but everybody thinks it's Abby. But she basically finds a recording of one of them in the hospital saying, I was one of the ones who wanted to go after the smuggler, which is why I think it's Nora, because I think if it was Abby, she would have said, I wanted to go after this fucker. Um, but it's a voice saying, I was one of the ones who wanted to go after the smuggler. Um, because even if we could find the girl again, there's nobody else who can make the cure now, which I think is a ridiculous thing to think, but you have to find somebody. But that was their vision. And then Joel went after her because she left him a note, so she knew where she was going. And it was at that point that she made him tell the truth. Now,
Hmm.
here are and I'm sorry for ranting, I'm sorry for taking up so much time, but here are my both positive and negative. Not negative necessarily, but here are my thoughts in both directions of why I think the TV show version works better and why the game version actually works better, depending on which part of the story we're telling. I think the ultimatum that Ellie gives him in that moment in the game is a weird. ultimatum. So the TV
Hmm.
show works better because in the game version, while they're there at the hospital, Ellie tells him, "If you tell me the truth, I'll go back to Jackson, but we're done. And if you lie to me, I don't even remember what it's just such a weird ultimatum. It's like if
Yeah.
you tell me the truth, I'm still going to go back with you, but now we're not going to talk to you kind of thing." So it's I get it, and I get the way they did it in that story. For the rest of it to play out, you have to like make sense that, well, I'm going to go back with you, and I think no matter what, Ellie would go back to Jackson because where else is she going to go, kind of
Hmm.
thing. But that made that not no sense, but it was a weird thing in the game. So I think the TV show version of not having to worry about that ultimatum is a much better thing. However, I think when it finally comes time for Ellie to say, "I don't know if I can forgive you for that, but I'd like to try," works better when it's 2 years into her knowing the official truth
Mm.
compared to her just learning it and then immediately coming up with that thought in her head. Now, you not saying you can't come up with it. I'm not saying it makes no sense to say it, but I think the idea of having that stirring with you for so long to be able to finally admit that maybe I would like to give you that chance to just immediately thinking that doesn't feel right to me. So I think that feels rushed in a lot of ways. And again, it's still valid, but I just like the idea of her having that simmer in her head for a little, it doesn't have to be 2 years, it could have been a little bit more. Like, I just would have liked to have her to learn it a little earlier compared to just learning it, officially confirming it to then right into all of that. Um, and then my only other comment is, again, I know you don't have to have certain lines or certain things happen, but there's a certain power in a lot of stuff that I want everybody else to witness. And I think that having Joel, which he does in the game, when he does the whole um making a cure would have killed you. But in the game he says, "So I stopped them." And I love that. I think that's so,
Hmm.
like, again, the goosebumpy moment. It again, the way they did in the TV show, it wouldn't make sense for him to say that. But I wish he would have said that. To have people hear him say that would have been so, like, ooh,
Yeah.
especially for people who agree with Joel and what he
Yeah.
did. It's like, how do you not want to hear him say that? So it was weird not having that. But again, that's just an aside, but it's my only other thought. And again, rant over. I apologize.
No, that was like a really good point, I guess, because like the way they handled the whole porch scene, it flowed pretty well, and the tie-in like with the whole thing with his dad, I think they did a pretty good job with it.
Yeah.
And I like the points you just made about like her like kind of finding this out, and I guess all of her anger from everything kind of like with Eugene and the whole promise thing essentially being like, don't lie to me again, like if you want me to trust you, like kind of makes sense for the TV show.
I mean, that's all. There's two things. That's also what bothers me a little bit about the TV show version because, like, in everything, when Abby has to get the truth out of Joel, or not the truth, but like get him to say it, Ellie in that moment. Well, of course, even in the game version, Ellie in that moment is trying to pull it out of him. But in the game version, it feels like he offers it up compared to having to have her pull it out of him a little
Hmm.
bit more. And I feel that the TV version of Joel, it's like everybody's got he never actually he says it, of course. Don't get me wrong, but it's less about him saying it and more of him just like confirming.
Hmm.
And I thought that I think that takes away a little bit also from his character, which I find a little odd. Again,
Hmm.
not anything that ruins any of it, but and I do love the fact that it's you can get so much out of the man with just a nod. Um, but I would have liked him to say more. And another thing too, and I love because I've said it so many times, and I know other people think it. It's not like I'm the only one saying it, but I love that Ellie calls him out for being selfish because again, that's my whole thing is that Joel is selfish. He did all those things for him because of how it would affect him if he lost Ellie. And not to say that he doesn't care for Ellie. I'm not trying to say that he doesn't, wouldn't do that, but it's more about his own feelings.
Hmm.
And then I attribute that to her as well, that she also is a selfish person. But because it keeps coming back. Like I saw somebody comment about something I said at one point or another, and I get it, but I get very upset with people's arguments over trying to justify what Joel did. You can agree with him, you can say that he did the right thing, the wrong thing, whatever you want. But I get because I think find people find way too many ways of justifying it to themselves just because it makes them feel better, and they don't listen to what's actually going on. Because I think one of the because I think a lot of people go to the fact that like even in the TV show, the mycologist said there's no cure, you can't make vaccines for these things, and I'm like, but I don't think because that's the best change the TV show made that I don't think people pay attention to because everybody wants to convince themselves that you wouldn't know if the cure was going to work, so why do it? And I'm like, yeah, I get that. But the way Marlene explains it in the TV show, because people still think they're making a vaccine. It's like, no, they're not making a vaccine. In the TV show, Jerry's idea is clearly I'm going to multiply the version of the cordyceps inside her, and we're just going to put that inside everybody. That's his cure. His cure is not making a vaccine, not making something you shoot into somebody. He's basically going to take the mushrooms that are in her that signal other mushrooms to say, "Oh, this one's infected already," and he's going to multiply that and then put that into other people's bodies. It's like the camouflage version from World War Z. It's like you're just basically putting something inside you that's going to signal off. And I don't think people realize that was what they were trying to do. And again, maybe it wouldn't work. I don't know. And I'm not going to make that argument now. But if you think about it, pretty good plan. Pretty good plan, I think.
I feel like that's like one of those like superhero kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Dilemmas where it's like, do I save Lois? Do I save 1,000 people? Like,
But, and that's the other interesting thing about having the port scene happen so early in the show. Because I think a lot of people up to this point who didn't play the game will go like, "Oh, Ellie probably if they would have asked her, she probably would have said, yeah, she's okay with it to die." But in the game version, you don't get that confirmation from her until the end of the goddamn game, where now people do know is like that's what she wanted to happen technically. Well, she didn't know, granted, and I think again the game version is better because she's completely unconscious the entire time. In the TV show, it's like, oh, she's awake, they just don't tell her, which I found weird. Um, but it's the idea is like I was supposed to die in that fucking hospital. So now you have that clarity that she would have wanted it that way. So I don't want to hear people arguing anymore about whether it should have happened or not. I get it. I get it. I get it. Fighting for your child. I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't do that if that was you or anything. I'm not trying to take that away from you if that's how you feel. But I'm just saying, like, I think people need to be a little more open minded when talking about it. Maybe that's me. I don't know. Uh, anyway, were there any other notes that we forgot about that you wanted to mention?
Um, I think we hit all the major points. I mean, just the space scene was pretty beautiful. Like even like the sun, and the shadows, like it
Yep.
was recreated really well. I was like, oh my God.
I will. Here's where we're gonna go. We're gonna go super spoiler right now, everybody. So if you have never played the game or don't want to know, please leave end the episode now. Because I will. I do want to say, based on what I know now, what we've seen so far, where we know that the next episode is gonna be the last episode, and unfortunately, I don't know, unfortunately, but a small little 2 second clip I did see. So I know we're definitely getting something next episode. I want your thoughts, and I'll give you my thoughts on how we think the season's going to officially the last scene of the season's going to be.
Hmm.
What do you think it's going to be? You could say it's super spoiler, so people who play the games only should be here. So you think, uh,
So I think
based on
it's
what you
gonna
said,
be,
Jesse's going to get shot in the face.
yeah.
But you think it's going to be the last thing we see, and then it's going to go to credits?
Like,
You think that's going to happen? It's going to go to credits. I have a feeling They will go super cliffhangery, but I have a feeling it's going to instead fade to black on Abby going, "We let you live and you wasted it," and then it will go to black.
Mm.
And but we won't go to the flashback of her as a kid or anything like that. I think it's just going to be, "We let you live and you wasted it." Cut to black. Jesse's sure as shit getting shot in the face though. um, uh,
Yeah, they do have to end on something with Abby.
oh, clearly. But I was for the longest time, even when the season started, I was like, will they give us the scene of her in the hospital with Jerry and all them, or I don't even know if we're still going to get those scenes. I'm sure we're going to have to. Again, especially since I mean we're in the spoiler section, so it's okay, everybody. But especially since I'm very curious about how the TV show will be able to turn people into liking Abby the way the game
Hmm.
does, or even accepting Abby. Because I think there's people who still don't like her, but they'll go like, oh, okay. I don't know. I'm so curious how the TV show is going to do that, and I think showing some of that's going to have to happen. Um,
Yeah, they have to really like personalize her, make her human, like, humanize her and show all
yeah.
those moments. Oh shit,
I
my laptop.
honestly, however, though, again, I don't know what they're going to do because again, I clearly they've changed Mel's character a lot. I think I'm still curious if they're going to make her pregnant or not. I don't know.
Better. They better, man.
But I am more concerned about how they're going to humanize Manny, the way they've treated Manny so far in the show. Um, because again, like Manny is Abby, like in the world of comparisons, Manny's like the Jesse version for Abby, and it's so because to me, it took so much more time for people to warm up to Abby, which makes sense. But there were people who go like 10 minutes from watching Manny spit on Joel and cursing at him to going like, oh, I like that guy. Like in the game version, they're so quick to go like, oh, I like Manny. How can you do this? That other thing. Um, so it's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see, but I want to see how they can do that because the way they've painted Manny so far is so weird to me. Um, but again, I get that. Like that's what they're doing. Maybe it could be even better because if they can do that, they've done something even better than the game by making him even more hateful of a character to being oh, I like that guy. Even though if you like him in the game, he's still a bit of a Chad or cad, I should say. He's a bit of a cad, but you still gotta like the guy. So yeah, we'll see. Till next week. Ooh. Thanks everybody. We've been in shambles.